He slid the magazine across the counter before I could set down my coffee. Forbes. The cover line read, "The shadow economy's most powerful player nobody knows." The photograph was 2 years old. Me, mid-sentence at a conference I had attended under a different name, gesturing at something off-frame, looking like someone who knew exactly how much everything in the room was worth. I looked at the photo for 1 second. Then I looked at the kid behind the register. "That's you," he said. Not a question. "People say that sometimes." I kept my voice pleasant. But seriously, how much for the coffee?" He blinked, rang it up. I paid cash, signed the magazine because it seemed faster than arguing, and walked back to my Honda with the same unhurried steps I used everywhere. Measured, deliberate, unremarkable on purpose. 8 years of perfect anonymity, dismantled by a 22-year-old gas station attendant in a Houston suburb who read financial magazines on Tuesday afternoons. I pulled onto the highway and called Sophia. "We have a problem," I said. "I've seen it." Her voice was already 2 steps ahead of the conversation. "How bad?" "Someone just asked me for my autograph at a Texaco." A pause. "How close are you to the estate?" 11 miles. "Then go. Smile, eat your mother's food. We manage the rest at first light." She hung up. My phone buzzed immediately. "Mama." I already knew what it said without reading it. Something about cardigans, something about being close, something about Aunt Carmela. I dropped the phone face down on the seat and kept driving. The Cruz Moretti estate materialized through the trees the way it always had, sudden and deliberate, like a statement addressed to no one in particular. 4 Escalades, 2 Range Rovers, Harrison Blake's white Bentley parked at the far end like a period at the end of a very long sentence. I handed my keys to a valet who could not quite conceal his surprise at the Honda and walked toward the entrance. "Valentina!" My mother appeared at the top of the stone steps. Rosaria Cruz Moretti at 61 made aging look like a personal choice she had made entirely in her own favor. She kissed both my cheeks, held me at arm's length, and looked at the cardigan. "You look rested," which meant she had decided not to say what she actually thought. "You look beautiful, Mama." That one, I meant. She steered me inside with practiced efficiency. "Your father is by the fireplace. Marco is already here." She lowered her voice slightly on that last part, the way she always did when she was proud of him and trying to not let it show. "He has news." "So I hear." "Harrison Blake asked about you." She squeezed my arm. "He said he might have something suitable for your background, bookkeeping, for one of his smaller properties." I let the silence sit for exactly 1 beat. "I'll talk to him," I said. She brightened. That was all she needed, the possibility of a story she could tell her friends. Valentina is consulting for the Blakes now, something to work with. My father found me before I found him. "There she is." Dante Cruz pulled me into a hug that smelled like cedar and the same cologne he had worn my entire life. He turned me toward his cluster of associates the way a man presents something he is broadly proud of, even if he cannot quite explain what it is. "My accountant daughter. Marco got the instincts, this one got the brains." The men laughed the way men laugh at things designed to be compliments. I smiled and thought about the Varela Group quarterly reports sitting on my secure server and said nothing. Marco found me an hour later at the bar. My brother, at 41, was objectively handsome, all jawline and certainty. His suit was new, his watch newer. He held a glass of something amber and wore the expression of a man keeping a secret badly. "Little sister." He looked over me. "Still doing the librarian thing?" "I'm an accountant, Marco." Same energy. He grinned, the apology already folded into it. "Mama says you drove up. In the Honda?" "In the Honda." He shook his head. "Val, people talk. Let them." I took a sparkling water from a passing tray. "She says you have news." The shift in his posture was immediate, that almost imperceptible expansion of the chest that meant he had been waiting all evening for someone to ask exactly that. "After dinner," he said. "I want everyone to hear it at once."
Then he leaned in. Varela Group FAL, Mexican infrastructure, 4 states, massive growth pipeline. I've been in talks for months. We close this week. I looked at my brother's face, at the pride in it, at years of our father's approval distilled into this single anticipated moment of triumph. Congratulations, I said, and I meant some version of it. That's a significant company. A significant? He laughed. It's a rocket ship, and I've got my hand on the controls. He pointed at me with his glass. Even you have to admit, this is the kind of move that actually changes things. I sipped my water. I am sure it will be interesting to watch, I said. Something flickered across his face, a hesitation he couldn't explain and didn't examine. Then he was already turning toward his next audience. I watched him go, set down my glass, walked to the back hallway, and called Sophia. Marco just told me he's announcing the Varela acquisition tonight, I said, voice low. He thinks it closes this week. A pause. Then, quietly, he has no idea. None. Do you want to say something tonight? I looked back toward the warm light of the main hall, my father raising a glass at something Marco had said, my mother moving through her party like the graceful architect of a world she had built entirely around the wrong measurements. No, I said, let them have tonight. Marco made his announcement to a room full of applause and raised glasses. My father looked at his son with the full weight of everything he had ever hoped for. I sat at my end of the table, ate, smiled at the right moments, and said nothing of consequence to anyone. Harrison Blake found me after dessert, handed me his card, and suggested, with genuine kindness and absolutely no idea who he was talking to, that his property manager might have use for someone comfortable with spreadsheets. I thanked him, took the card, tucked it into my cardigan pocket, drove to my hotel at 11, checked 3 markets, read the Varela board's confirmation email, replied in 4 words, proceed, first light tomorrow. Set my alarm, went to sleep. The call came at 9:07, which meant Marco had seen the news at 9 o'clock exactly and spent 7 minutes trying to convince himself it wasn't real. I was already dressed, already caffeinated, already 3 emails deep when my phone lit up with his name. I let it ring twice, not for drama. I simply needed to finish the sentence I was writing. Marco, I answered. Tell me this is wrong. His voice was the texture of a man who hadn't yet decided which emotion was appropriate. The Bloomberg alert, routers, 6 different sources, Val, 6, and they all say the same. They're accurate. Then came a silence, not the silence of someone thinking, the silence of someone whose entire morning, whose entire week, whose entire carefully constructed narrative about himself had just met something immovable. Crusada Capital Partners, he said, finally, each word separate, careful. That's you. I founded it 8 years ago. We've been operating globally for 6. I kept my voice the same temperature it always was. The Varela acquisition closed at midnight. The board confirmed this morning. 8 years, he laughed. Not a happy sound, the laugh of a man who has just seen a magic trick and cannot decide whether to be delighted or humiliated. 8 years and you never, not once, you never asked. Silence, a different quality this time. I was going to close that deal. His voice had found its emotion now, something caught between anger and a wound that had no clean name. I've been working that acquisition for months. I told Dad. I told everyone last night. I stood up at that table and I know. You knew last night when I told you. You already knew. Yes, and you said nothing. I said it would be interesting to watch. The line went so quiet I could hear him breathing. I waited, because the most powerful thing you can do in a negotiation or a conversation or a family is let the silence do its own work. Why? He asked, finally. Underneath the anger, underneath the wounded pride, something real, something actually asking. Why the accountant cover? Why Atlanta? Why the Honda? Why all of it?
I stood and walked to the hotel window. Houston spread below me, flat and glinting in the early light. Because I needed to build something real, not something that looked real, not something that performed well at dinner parties. And I knew, I have always known, that if I had done it loudly, the way this family does everything, I would have spent every year managing other people's opinions instead of managing my company. I paused. The anonymity was never the secret, Marco. The work was never the secret. You just decided what I was before I had any chance to become it. He didn't respond immediately. I heard movement, a chair, a door, the sound of a man repositioning himself because he needed somewhere to put what he had just heard. 40 billion, he said quietly, not accusing, almost reverent. The articles are saying 40 billion under management. Currently, 2 deals close next quarter that will move that number significantly. And the Varela deal is the anchor of a larger infrastructure play across the Southwest, 3 connected acquisitions over 18 months. I let that settle. Your company has been trying to break into that market for 2 years, Marco. You have strong regional relationships, solid construction credibility, and 0 global infrastructure leverage. I have the leverage and none of the regional access. The line went quiet. This time, the silence had a different shape entirely. This was a man doing math. "You're not calling to gloat," he said slowly. "I never gloat. It's inefficient. You're calling because I called you, Marco. But since we're here, I have a proposal. I'll send it before noon. Read it before you speak to Dad." I checked the time. I have a board call in 8 minutes. I ended the call, opened my laptop, and pulled up the document Sophia and I had drafted 3 weeks ago. The partnership framework that, if Marco could get past his ego and the family past their assumptions, would build something none of us could construct alone. My phone buzzed. Mama, then Papa, then a text from Aunt Carmela that read simply, "Mija?" I silenced them all, joined my board call, and spent the next 45 minutes being exactly who I had always been, in a room full of people who had always known it. Afterward, Sophia came in with coffee and the morning's press summary. She set both on the desk and looked at me with the expression she reserved for moments like this. Not quite a smile, something more precise. The look of someone who has been present for every chapter of a story and knows exactly what the next one will cost. "Your brother's company stock is up 9%, on rumors alone." "I know." I took the coffee. "Send him the proposal." She nodded, moved toward the door, then paused. "Your mother called the hotel directly twice." I looked at my coffee, thought about my mother on those front steps. The careful smile, the cardigan assessment, the Harrison Blake business card offered like a life raft to a woman who had been navigating open ocean for 8 years. "Tell her I'll be home for dinner. My home. Tell her to bring everyone."
The penthouse was ready by 6. Not ostentatiously. Spectacle for its own sake had never interested me. The caterers were from a quiet Italian place 3 blocks away, a restaurant that had been close to collapse 4 years ago, until an anonymous investor bought the building and restructured their lease. The owner, a 3rd-generation Roman named Enzo Carlucci, still didn't know who had saved his restaurant. He only knew that whenever Miss Cruz called, he brought his best. I stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows and watched the Houston skyline shift from gold to amber to the bruised purple that precedes full dark, and I let my mind go quiet, which was always how I thought before something that mattered. My phone buzzed. "Marco, read the proposal. We need to talk tonight." I typed back, "That's why I invited you." They arrived at 7. Marco came first, which surprised me, and then didn't. He stepped out of the elevator and stopped. He looked at the room the way people look at things that quietly rearrange their understanding of a person. The skyline through the glass, the art on the walls, none of it decorative, all of it significant. The quiet authority of a space that had never needed to announce itself. "How long have you lived here?" he asked. 5 years. He nodded slowly. 5 years of holiday dinners at the estate. 5 years of family gatherings where nobody had thought to ask what his sister's life actually looked like when nobody was watching. Our parents arrived 4 minutes later. Dante came through the elevator doors and stopped beside his son, and for a moment, the two of them stood identically. Same broad shoulders, same jaw, same expression of men confronting an equation they had been solving incorrectly for years. Rosaria came in last and said nothing at all, which from my mother was the loudest possible response. She turned slowly in the foyer, taking in every detail with the trained eye of a woman who understood exactly what spaces say about the people who inhabit them. Then she turned to look at me. Something moved across her face that I had not seen there before, or perhaps had not known how to read. Not pride, not yet, the precursor to pride. The moment just before a woman gives herself permission to feel something she has been withholding. "Valentina," she said softly. "Just my name, nothing attached to it. No instruction, no assessment, no gentle redirection towards something smaller. Just my name," in her voice. "Come in, sit down. Enzo made the branzino," I said. We ate first, because I had learned from my mother that important conversations land better on a full stomach. The first 20 minutes were careful. 4 people navigating new terrain, testing where the ground was solid. Dante asked questions about Cruzada's founding with the focused attention of a man rebuilding a structure he realized he had misread entirely. Marco was quieter than I had ever seen him. He ate, he listened. Twice he started to say something and stopped, which for Marco was an act of enormous self-discipline. It was Rosaria who broke it open. She set down her fork with deliberate quiet, placed both hands flat on the table, and looked at me with clear, steady eyes. "I offered you Harrison Blake's bookkeeping. Last night, I stood right next to you and offered you bookkeeping. I did. Because I thought I was helping you. I know, Mama. I didn't see you." Her voice held the particular steadiness of someone who has decided the truth matters more than composure. "I was looking directly at you for 34 years, and I did not see you. Not because you hid, you were always exactly yourself, but because I decided what you were, and I never once looked past my own decision." The table was very quiet. Dante reached over and covered her hand. He said, "Your mother is right," he turned to me. "I introduced you last night like you were the consolation prize. I taught you that the work speaks for itself, then spent years refusing to listen to yours." Marco looked up. "The proposal," he said. Not a deflection, Marco reaching for the only language he had ever been completely fluent in, the language of what comes next. His eyes were different than they had been that morning. Something had been worked through. "The structure is a strong one," he said. "The regional relationships we bring, the global leverage you have, the combined reach is something neither of us builds alone in under a decade." "Correct. I want to do it," he held my gaze, "but as actual partners, not a merger, not a quiet acquisition, equal decision-making on every joint venture." "That's what the proposal says, Marco." "I know. I needed to say it out loud." He paused. Then he set down his fork, and when he looked at me again, it was with the unguarded expression of a man who has finally grown tired of the weight of something he has been carrying too long. "I have been measuring myself against you my entire life without knowing it, calling you small so I could feel large, and you just kept building, quietly, without needing me to see it." "I didn't need the acknowledgement," I said, "but I won't pretend it cost nothing to go without it." That landed exactly where it needed to. Nobody flinched from it, nobody tried to soften it. That, too, was something new. After dinner, my father and I stood at the windows, while Marco and Rosaria spoke quietly at the table behind us. The city was fully dark now, all light and geometry, the way cities look when you are high enough to see the pattern in them. "All this time,"
he said quietly. All those acquisitions your mother and I read about in the papers. The shadow firm nobody could trace. He shook his head. That was my daughter. That was your daughter. He was quiet for a long moment. You know what I kept thinking today, after I saw the news? I kept thinking about the time you were 12 and you reorganized the entire accounting system for my construction company because you decided it was inefficient. You didn't ask permission, you just did it and then showed me the result. He glanced sideways at me. I told you it was impressive for your age. You did. I should have said it was impressive, full stop. He turned to face me. I'm saying it now. I looked at my father, this large, loud, self-made man who had built his world with his hands, and felt something in my chest settle that had been unsteady for a very long time. Not everything heals at once, it never does, but the first true foundation stone of something better had just been laid, and we both knew it. The partnership announcement goes out Monday. Cruz Moretti and Cruzada Capital, joint press release. Sophia will send you the draft tomorrow. He smiled, the real one, not the performance smile he wore at parties, but the one I remembered from childhood, from those rare, unguarded moments when he forgot to be impressive and was simply himself. You're already 3 steps ahead. I'm always 3 steps ahead, Papa. I smiled back. You just weren't watching the board. They left at 10. Rosaria held my hands between both of hers at the elevator. No words, just that. Dante's handshake became a hug. Marco left with the proposal tucked under his arm and something in his eyes that looked like the beginning of a man becoming more than he had been. The penthouse went quiet. Sophia had gone. Enzel's team had cleared everything. The skyline sat in the windows like a painting that had always been mine. I poured one small measure of scotch, sat in the chair by the window, and let myself think about the gas station attendant and his Forbes magazine, about my mother's hands flat on the table, about the 12-year-old who reorganized the construction company's books because the inefficiency genuinely bothered her, about 8 years of early mornings and encrypted servers in an Atlanta office that looked like nothing from the outside and was everything within. 8 years of being underestimated. 8 years of being offered bookkeeping jobs at other people's parties. 8 years of smiling at the right moments and saying nothing of consequence, while quietly building the largest thing in the room. I finished my scotch, opened my laptop. The next deal was not going to close itself. It never did. Hey guys, thank you for listening to this story. If Valentina's story had you thinking for a minute, if you have ever built something in silence while the world looked right past you, hit that thumbs up button. It means more than you know. And drop a comment telling me where in the world you are listening from right now. I want to know exactly who is in this room with me. If someone in your life needs to hear a story like this today, share it with them, because sometimes the right story finds us at exactly the right moment. Subscribe for more stories like this one every single day. I will see you in the next one. Stay tuned.